Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and boy, we had no idea how crazy this primary was going to be. We had record turnout. More than 1.5 million, almost 2 million.
Yep, and we were relevant.
Out of 7 million registered voters roughly in the state.
And for once, we were relevant in the presidential tally.
Right.
On both sides, actually.
And I think that's probably what gave the turnout a big boost. So, a lot of people also came out to vote against Governor Rauner's candidates.
That's right. It was, Governor Rauner, he was not on the ballot on Tuesday, but he was there between the lines. He had a big stake in 2 different legislative races. One involved a House Democrat, Ken Duncan from Chicago, and Ken Duncan had sided with Bruce Rauner on a couple of key issues, and Duncan had also in the process been very openly rebellious against House Speaker Michael Madigan, who keeps a very tight handle on his caucus, and Rauner was out to protect him in this primary.
Right.
Speaker Madigan put up a primary opponent to Ken Duncan, Juliana Stratton, and not Governor Rauner himself, but organizations that were aligned with Rauner put in $4 million on Ken Duncan's behalf in that race, and it wasn't even close.
Which is the spending in that race is got to be a record.
Record spending, and it did no good whatsoever. Juliana Stratton defeated Ken Duncan by more than a 2-to-1 margin. The other key race for Governor Rauner involved a Republican downstate senator, Sam McCann from the 50th District. And the 50th District includes part of Springfield on the east, then it goes all the way west to the Mississippi River and down a bit into Macoupin County in southern Illinois.
That's a big district.
It's a lot geographically, it's very big. Sam McCann's a Republican. He represents a lot of Springfield, which has a lot of unionized state employees in it. So when it came time to vote on a very important bill to Governor Rauner, that Governor Rauner wanted to defeat, Sam McCann voted, he said he voted with his district, and he voted with the Democrats in favor of this bill. He voted to override Governor Rauner's veto of this particular bill. And ever since then, that happened in August, ever since then it was known that Sam McCann was going to face some trouble in his primary. And Rauner put, and his friends, put $3.2 million into unseating Sam McCann. They were supporting a candidate named Bryce Benton. He's a state trooper from Springfield. Put $3.2 million into that. Also, big record. Nothing has ever been close to this kind of spending in a legislative primary. And Sam McCann came out on top, about a 5-point victory, which is not huge, but
pretty solid.
A solid victory.
Yeah, solid.
So what you had happening was, on one side, Governor Rauner has said all through, ever since he's been put into office, he has said that there are so many Democrats who want to side with me, but won't because they're scared of Speaker Madigan. So he wanted to prove with Ken Duncan that if you side with me and Madigan comes after you in a primary, I can protect you. That failed, off the charts failure. On the other side, he wanted to show Republican members of the General Assembly that if you step out of line with me, especially in this one, McCann stepped out of line on a very important union bill.
Yeah.
That's one of Rauner's big issues.
It's the big issue.
Well, Rauner wanted to show Republicans in the General Assembly that if you step out of line with me, you're going to pay the price for it. So now,
So
Sam
what were
McCann
some
didn't
of
pay
the?
the price.
So if you're a lawmaker and you risk the wrath of Governor Rauner in addition to the millions of spending, what's some examples of some of the attacks that you might be subjected to? Because you live in that district.
Yeah, you had Sam McCann. We were robocalled incessantly in that district about that don't let Speaker Madigan and the Chicago machine steal this election. Vote for Bryce Benton. That's what the whole thing was. If you vote against Rauner, if you vote with the Democrats, you are part of the Chicago machine. Use that a lot, very effective on downstate voters, I guess. And you're also allied with Speaker Madigan. And that was in mailers, it was on TV, it was everywhere. But with McCann having survived, you know.
Speaker Madigan did the same thing to the opposite extreme.
Yes.
For instance, he had his own opponent, the first one that was truly serious and well-funded in some time, and he had signs plastered all over the district talking about his opponent having been convicted of a felony, 20 years ago or something like that.
And he also, against Ken Duncan, he used Bruce Rauner as the bad guy. And, there were mailers.
Got the president to issue an endorsement.
Right. But clearly you have two different things going on. In my downstate Senate district, you have Governor Rauner trying to use Madigan as the bad guy. And that didn't work. And in Chicago, you have Madigan using Bruce Rauner as the bad guy against Ken Duncan, and that worked big
quite
time.
Well.
Yeah, there was one mailer that I remember I think it was Ken Duncan standing behind a big pile of money, and it said something to the effect of Rauner and his rich friends are helping Ken Duncan.
Yeah.
And
sellout was a word I heard a lot about Duncan.
Now, here's the big thing, though, with the McCann race in particular. Bruce Rauner's message, as I said, all along has been to the Republican caucus in the Senate and the House, you stay with me, don't be disloyal. If you're disloyal, you're going to pay a big price. And one of the things that happened was last May, Rauner ordered the Republican caucuses to vote against all the Democrats' budget bills. There were 20 of them, and they did so. Well, then when things got hairy in June, Rauner decided, I'm going to sign one of those bills, and that's the bill that funds elementary and secondary education. So he signed that into law. That's why your schools opened on time this year. It's probably a big reason why we've got the ongoing budget standoff, because we're not in chaos with schools closed across the state. Well, anyway, so the Republicans did that. They voted against it as they were told to in May. He signs it. Now they go out in November and they've got a campaign with their Democratic opponents saying, hey, your Republican representative or senator voted against funding your elementary and high schools, and the governor signed it. How are they going to explain that? So, that's a tough one. And you just wonder if more Republicans aren't going to look at what happened with Sam McCann and say, Rauner's not so tough. And I've got a university in my district, and I'm really getting a lot of pressure from the people back home, just like Sam McCann was getting pressure from the union people, his state worker base. You got to wonder if someone's got a university in their district, or they've all got community colleges. At what point are they going to say, look, I know that this... I got
to represent my constituents?
Well, the thing is...
It's funny because Rauner's remarks the day after the election were not, gee, I had a rough night. It was... we were able to protect a lot of other seats we wanted to protect, and oh, by the way, these guys were not independent. It was interesting that the definition of when independent is okay seems to change.
Ken Duncan is an independent thinker,
right? But Sam McCann is not.
No, he's a puppet of Mike Madigan,
right?
So where does that come in? But we've had one thing to keep an eye on is we've had several times in recent weeks even where the Democrats have advanced bills that would provide some funding to colleges.
For higher education,
but the problem is it would okay the spending, but it doesn't bring in any of the money. So all you're doing is adding hundreds of millions of dollars on top of the debt. And so Rauner has been telling his caucus, and Republicans have been, and rightly so, they've been saying we're not going to vote for this because yes, it'll give some quick, temporary, easy relief to the students who want their grants and the universities who are having trouble. But in the long run, it's really going to cause big problems for Illinois. We got to figure out the structural solution here. Now that this has happened with Sam McCann, now that you've got a general election coming up, at some point, these lawmakers are probably going to say, you know, I'm going to lose my election in November if I don't do this. Yeah, it's not good in the long term, but I gotta satisfy my people. And if they know that Rauner doesn't have as much power maybe as he thought he did, that's going to give him a little more license to do so.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. I would imagine it was still difficult to be Sam McCann or Ken Duncan.
Right.
And just have your...
I mean, there's a lot more that can be said about Sam McCann as far as even going into the November election. He's still got a lot of problems. The Board of Elections is looking at his use of his campaign fund. He's got tax liens. He was never an ideal candidate.
And there were reports of some questionable things going on in Ken Duncan's district as well. So it's a nasty business.
That it is.
All right, so that's it for this week's edition. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.